My reign as a Jeopardy champion lasted almost 35 minutes.
This was coming, like the waiting room of the vasectomist, and I know that's not what he's called. I know there's like a fancy word, but...
If you leave, I have nothing left to live for.
So as you've heard tonight already, rivalry can take you to some fairly dark places. And for me, I hit rock bottom at 30 years old, standing outside a courtroom in New Orleans with full suit, with my boss looking really worriedly into my face saying, Emilia, I had to pull you out of there. I was pretty sure you were about to rip that prosecutor's hair ribbon out of her hair and feed it to her. Now, I am totally nonviolent, pacifist. I don't even yell at people who aren't in my immediate family. But he was right to be concerned, because I was about to get in my first fight wearing pantyhose and pearls. So to understand how I got there, let me back up a little bit. I'm a public defender, which means that I represent people who are charged with crimes but can't afford a lawyer. And a public defender's natural rival is the prosecutor. We try and get people out of jail, they try and put people in jail. And I went to law school to be a public defender. I wanted to be like Atticus Finch or John Adams. And prosecutors go to law school because they want to get evildoers off the streets. They want to be like the prosecutors from Law and Order or Batman. But it's a respectful rivalry everywhere I'd practiced up to New Orleans. My best friend's a prosecutor. I'm not prejudiced against prosecutors. New Orleans was different. It was really aggressive between public defenders and prosecutors, and I swore when I got there I was not going to get sucked in. But there was Heather. Heather started at the district attorney's office the exact same time I started at the public defender's office, and we were different. Heather grew up in Louisiana and had, like many people in that office, very little interest in the community that she was incarcerating. She was petite, pretty, perfectly put together at all times. She's the sort of girl who always had her hair in a ponytail but with a ribbon around it, you know, like the cheerleaders in high school. Because, you know, it would be so inappropriate to just have the hairband. I am not like that. But again, I was not going to get sucked into it, even though it was super annoying that she was also really smart and good at her job. I hated that about her. Again, not getting sucked in, I'm going to focus on my cases. And one of my cases at that time was a client who was fast becoming just one of my all-time favorite clients. She was so sweet, so funny. I loved her mother. I loved her kids. She used to write me letters from jails and would dot all the I's with hearts. It was completely adorable. Now, she was charged with crime against nature. Second offense, she was a repeat offender. And crime against nature requires you to solicit unnatural carnal copulation. The penalty for that is 20 years, mandatory 20 years in jail. And then you have to register as a sex offender for 15 years after that. That sounds bad, right? If you found out someone convicted of that had moved to your street, you'd lock up your kids because there's an unnatural carnal copulator on the loose. Here's what my client did. And when I say did, I mean this is what the police say she did, and she confessed, so it's what she says she did. Everyone agrees. She was a sex worker on Bourbon Street. No argument about that. She was walking home one night, but she was not working that night when an undercover officer pulls up on her in an attempted sting. And he says, hey, baby, how about a date? And she says, no, it's raining, I'm tired, I'm going home. But he keeps pushing, how about a date, how about a date? She says, look, okay, fine. If you will drive me home and buy me a sandwich, I will suck your dick. That's it. Those are all the facts. For that, the state of Louisiana wants to put her in jail for 20 years. And let me be clear, if what she had said is, if you will drive me home and buy me a sandwich, we can have intercourse in the missionary position, that's a misdemeanor at most 6 months in jail. Louisiana, people. So she's way overcharged. And, I'm pretty sure that any district attorney in their right mind will agree with me on that. This woman should not go to jail for 20 years and then register as a sex offender, and will offer us prostitution as a plea bargain. So I go into court, with my client, her mother's there, and of course Heather is the DA assigned to the case, of course. So I tell Heather a lot of what I just told you about how great my client is. I tell her about the facts of the case and say, can we have a plea offer? And she said, absolutely you can. Your client pleads to 7 years in jail and then registers as a sex offender for 15 years. I thought she was kidding. I started explaining it to her again like she was slow, that would ruin my client's life. She'd lose custody of her children. She could never get a job if she had to register as a sex offender. That was insane. Heather looked at my client, who had started to cry a little bit when she heard the number 7 years, looked at her mother, who was in the same emotional state as my client, then looked at me and said, well, then tell your client to stop being a whore. That's when I almost fed her hair ribbon. My boss pulls me out, I calm down, I come back inside, I pretty politely tell her that we will not be accepting 7 years as a plea offer. And that's one of those moments where you think of the thing you should have said later. I should have told her to suck it. So we go back and we start getting ready for trial. We're going to try this case, and it's a kind of a hard case to try because we can't say my client didn't do it. The police officer says she did it, she confessed, and it's on video. So we need a different way to approach it. My client keeps saying, just tell them I have not been convicted of crime against nature first offense. Then they can't convict me of crime against nature second offense, which is actually true, but I could see in the computer that she had been convicted of crime against nature first offense, so we weren't going that direction. I decided that what we needed to show is that in this age, a blowjob is not considered unnatural carnal copulation. Now, look, reasonable minds can differ, and I don't know how Heather felt about it. Actually, you know what? I think I have a pretty good sense of how Heather felt about it. Fun fact, do you know it took Heather's boyfriend 7 years to propose? And this is Louisiana, where people get married right out of college. What do you think? Why did it take 7 years? What was missing for him in that relationship? But how Heather felt really didn't matter. What mattered is could I get 12 people on a jury to agree that a blowjob is not unnatural carnal copulation. So I did what I think anyone in this situation would do. I hired a blowjob expert. Professor Smith from Tulane was an expert in gender and evolving human sexuality and women's studies, and asked me repeatedly to stop calling her my blowjob expert. And in preparing tonight for this presentation, I looked back at the electronic file on this case, and I absolutely respected her wishes because her file in that file is titled Professor Smith, Fellatio Aficionado. So we have interns. I put the interns to work. And I was told I am the best boss in the world because they got to watch television for 2 weeks straight, 8 hours a day with Excel spreadsheets, marking down every time someone referenced a blowjob. A long list, really long. Now, as we're getting ready for trial, Heather, the prosecutor, serves me with a motion that I have to come to court to argue. And when I read what this motion says, I tell her, I really don't think any judge on the planet would grant this motion for you. What are you thinking? And she's like, well, let's just see. So the motion is essentially a list of words I, the defense attorney, will not be allowed to say during trial. Suck, blow, come, basically any word that's funny about a blowjob, because Heather will not have this trial turned into a joke. And the judge grants the motion. Louisiana. Because the obscenity here would be me saying, come, suck, or blow, rather than putting a poor woman in jail for 20 years for offering a blowjob in exchange for a sandwich. That's the obscenity. So we go back, and it's finally the night before trial, and oh my God, we realize that my client has never been convicted of crime against nature before. There was a computer error. No one knows, and I should have listened to her. So now, all we have to do to win this trial is to get the trial to start without Heather noticing that there's been a mistake. Haven't been convicted of crime against nature first, can't be convicted of crime against nature second. So we go in the next morning and we are holding our breaths. She talks to the jury, The jury is sworn in. Trial starts. We have won. And my client grabs my knee so hard under the table. We've already decided that even though we've won, we're going to keep going because we want it to be embarrassing for the district attorney so that they will never prosecute another poor woman in this way again. And Heather has gotten the sense from jury selection that the jury members are angry that prosecutors in the state of Louisiana, in the city of New Orleans, one of the highest murder rates in the country, are wasting their time prosecuting this woman for a felony. So she has to deal with that in her opening. And she stands up and she looks at them and very earnestly, in a very Heather way, totally unconsciously, she says, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that this is a hard charge to swallow." Thank you. I do not know what the best part of that was. Was it that she said it? That she didn't know she said it? Or that she had filed a legal motion to keep me from saying it? It was all good. In my opening statement, I did something I have never done before and never done since. I quoted the Bible. I said, ladies and gentlemen, they want you to convict her of unnatural carnal copulation for offering a blowjob. And audience, if you know it, say it with me. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Trial finishes, we win. If you forgive me, it is a total happy ending. My client goes home with her family and her mom. You know, I went up against Heather a number of times in the next 5 years that I was in New Orleans, and she was really, honestly, very good. And they did not always go my way. But that day, in that moment, and if I borrow some phrases from the list of words I was legally ordered not to say, we won. And Heather and her hair ribbon really blew it.